Hello viewers, I'm your host Uzma Jafri with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's begin the show in what could be termed as major geostrategic and diplomatic victory for India. The first phase of Chabahar port, a collaborative endeavour of India, Iran and Afghanistan to open a transit route between Kabul and Central Asia, was inaugurated by Iranian President. A report.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, in presence of ministers and high-ranking officials from 17 countries, including India and Afghanistan, officially inaugurated the southeastern port in Iran's Sistan and Balochistan province, marking the opening of a new extension of the strategic trade corridor. The expansion, which was carried out with an investment of $1 billion, including $235 million from India, has more than tripled the port's capacity to 8.5 million from 2.5 million tons a year.
اولین فاز طرح توسعه بندر تجاری بین المللی چابهار شهید بهشتی رو آغاز می‌کنیم علی برکت الله.
Chabahar, which is located 72 kilometers west of Pakistan's Gwadar port, holds immense strategic and economic significance for India, as it has already invested $100 million to construct a 218-kilometer long road from Delaram in western Afghanistan to Zaranj on the Iran-Afghan border to link up with Chabahar port. The port has turned out to be a strategic asset to India in the face of its geopolitical rivalry with China and Pakistan. Now, persistent efforts are being made by the trio of India, Afghanistan, Iran to make Chabahar Iran's closest sea link to the Indian Ocean, a rival to Gwadar port, which Pakistan has been building with Chinese investment under the Belt and Road Initiative. While the first phase of Chabahar has been completed, the trio is committed to gradually develop the port into a massive project that can handle a cargo of 80 million tons. This targeted commitment came a month after India sent its first consignment of 1.1 lakh tons of wheat for Afghanistan through the Chabahar port on October the 29th.
Pakistan had made it difficult for India to establish a secure transit route to markets in Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia and Gulf region by forbidding land transit through its territory. But by funding the Chabahar, India has emerged as a winner. Moving on. Democracy Forum, which has been persistently pushing the ideas of pluralism and tolerance through public debates, recently discussed the US President Donald Trump's revised policy for Afghanistan at University of London's Senate House. Eminent voices from different spheres of the society analysed and critiqued the situation, which has been aggravating with time. A report.
US President Donald Trump in August this year released a revised strategy for Afghanistan, a strategy which comprised a moderate surge of almost 4,000 more American forces, new rules of engagement that allowed them to more aggressively attack the Taliban and go after their sources of revenue and previously inaccessible hideouts in Pakistan. In light of this, the Democracy Forum hosted a panel of eminent experts to discuss if his new approach will stop cross-border terrorism in the region. Omar Samad, a former senior advisor to the chief executive of Afghanistan, called the revised policy a promising prospect and stressed on the importance of keeping the Afghan government on track with the reforms and measures for good governance and adequate training. He emphasized that engagement on many fronts would be needed to bring an end to cross-border terrorism in such a way that all stakeholders are satisfied.
They do not expect a complete and immediate stop to what some people call insurgency, others call terrorism, and even some call civil war, in my opinion, wrongly. But they do expect a gradual change in strategies and policies that feed and enable terrorism and militancy used as part of what Afghans consider as proxy confrontations in security policy perceptions that exist in our region.
While talking about the disruption of nexus between drug business and insurgents, Samad stressed on the need of trying alternative methods to create peace and a common vision to bring harmony and prosperity to the people and in particular the youth of Afghanistan.
Today's Afghanistan, 70% of whose population is under 30 and internet savvy, wants peace. But the kind of peace that is realistic, that is just, all-inclusive, and durable. They also want an end to policies that have, for the past 25 years, nurtured, enabled, and supported extremist-induced violence across our borders in South and Central Asia. So the vision is of a region that is home to forward-looking nations, connected and economically integrated, aiming to build societies and political orders that reflect their popular aspirations and are void of political violence, terror, and extremism.
Ridiculing the Trump's policy as shifting the deck chairs on the Afghan Titanic, Professor Thomas H. Johnson of the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California said Afghanistan had become a quagmire that was unwinnable and Taliban would fight for generations if significant strategic changes weren't made. He was also vocal in his condemnation of Pakistan in its approach to Afghanistan, branding it a duplicit enemy of the US and suggested India will be a reliable ally and can counter Pakistan's unreliability.
Pakistan has been a duplicit enemy relative to Afghanistan and not an ally. Let's call them what they are. They have indirectly and directly killed my students. So, I don't consider Pakistan an ally. I consider Pakistan an enemy. I recognize they have very different South Asian goals in the United States, but that doesn't excuse Pakistan from directly and indirectly killing American and NATO forces as well as many Afghan forces.
Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Jim Mattis visited Islamabad to take a review of the policies and actions being taken by the civilian and military leadership who have been accused of using the country as a base to carry out attacks in neighboring Afghanistan. US officials have long been frustrated by what they see as Pakistan's reluctance to act against groups such as the Afghan Taliban and the Haqqani network, who they believe exploit safe haven on Pakistani soil to launch attacks in Afghanistan.
Although Pakistan repeatedly boasts of taking tough measures against terrorism emanating from its land, United States officials say that Islamabad has not changed its stance in tackling it. Moving on, since April 2015, China and Pakistan have been extensively working to complete their joint China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project. However, the multi-billion-dollar project has been facing many challenges related to financing, distribution of benefits, and the growing resistance among the people affected by this project. We have a report.
One Belt, One Road. China's dream projects got a jolt when Pakistan, Nepal and Myanmar cancelled major projects planned by Chinese companies. The three projects, worth nearly $20 billion, all involved or were related to hydroelectricity, the production of electricity or water power. Pakistan called difficult financing terms by China as its reason for cancelling the $14 billion Diamar Bhasha Dam project. Nepal's Deputy Prime Minister blamed financial issues with a Chinese company for his country's decision to cancel a $2.5 billion contract for a hydroelectricity project. And Myanmar recently announced that it was no longer interested in big hydroelectric power projects. The announcement came 3 years after Myanmar stopped a $3.6 billion Chinese-supported dam project. The decisions by China's neighbors could mean a serious loss of prestige for the Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese plan involved building of power stations, roads and other infrastructure around the world.
The countries who were earlier supporting China's One Belt, One Road initiative are slowly realizing the futility of this mega project. My colleague Ravi Khandelwal recently spoke to Burzain Wagmar of University of London.
Mr. Wagner, there's a lot of hue and cry regarding the CPEC project, especially from Gilgit-Baltistan to Balochistan. So what is the issue out there?
Well, the issue is that it is skewed development, and there's no transparency because Islamabad has not mentioned to any province in any detail as to what the entire project ensues, except in certain transparency towards Punjab for obviously reasons of favoritism, being Nawaz Sharif's province and the Sharif brothers. That is why the Punjabis are not exactly complaining about it, but the Pashtuns in NWFP, Gilgit-Baltistan's indigenous Kashmiri citizens, Balochistan and Sindh are in revolt about asking questions and expecting some transparency from the government, and including Pakistani senators in the upper house of parliament, which is Pakistan's Rajya Sabha, with one senator even going so far as to declare that this is another East India company in the making. And he does have a point when he says this, because if you take a $75 billion loan from Beijing and expect to pay return payments over a 30-year stretched out period at the rate of 3 to 5.5% interest per annum, you're looking at outflows of at least a good 0.4% of your GDP for the next 30 years. A generation of 30 years will be impoverished of Pakistanis.
China is claiming that they will build infrastructure there, they will create more jobs, and it will bring prosperity to Pakistan.
Yes, so, and the Chinese do have a point, as the IMF report stated. In the first phase, that is the early harvest period, Pakistan will see a sudden spurge. You will see direct inflows of foreign direct investment, of course granted. You will see infrastructure picking up in the first stage, bottlenecks reducing because Pakistan does need to revamp its rail lines, artery roads, highways and the rest of it, plus coal and thermal hydro plants. I'm not denying that. The Chinese have a point, but they only stick to their script and keep harping on that. It is what the economists at the State Bank of Pakistan are querying, and other independent sources, including Deloitte as a global consultancy firm, has pointed out. What will happen in the middle phase after the first 2 years euphoria has dissipated? You see Khushali during the first 2 or 3 years because investments will surge in. But what will happen once you have to start rescheduling and debt servicing from the middle phase to the end phase, from year 3 onwards to year 30? And nobody's thought of that except Pakistani academics and economists who themselves are clamoring aloud as to why are we signing off things. Gwada Special Port and Economic Zone, to take one example, no corporation tax will be paid by the Chinese for 40 and 23 years respectively. Pakistanis have also signed, the Sharif administration has blindly gone and signed the proviso that the Chinese can bring in their own companies, consultants and infrastructural individuals. They are not obliged to hire locally any Pakistani at all.
My last question to you is, there's a rampant human rights violations going on from Gilgit to Balochistan. There are a number of enforced disappearances and killings and abductions. So how do you see the overall human rights situation there in Pakistan?
Well, if you're going to talk about human rights in Pakistan, I suggest your viewers and anyone looking at this program just consult The Economist magazine's July 22nd issue, which was a special survey of India and Pakistan at 70. And The Economist said that while India comes under intense, continuous scrutiny on Kashmir, quote, Pakistan gets a freer hand to do any and everything it wants in NWFP, decimating entire villages by carpet bombing in the name of operations against terror, or by killing Baloch human rights activists in Balochistan. And in Balochistan, what particularly happens is what I have consistently pointed out at various fora, including my own scholarly publications. After 70 years, in Kashmir, I have yet to come across a single Kashmiri missing body, so-called freedom fighters, with human feces stuffed in their mouth. No Kashmiri mother has ever found a single Kashmiri missing body, or even when it's located, any body stuffed with human feces stuffed in the mouth, burnt, and on the forehead, Bharat se tofa. Balochis find bodies with Pakistan se tofa on the forehead, and they find human feces, shit, stuffed in the mouth, half mutilated and burnt corpses left aside for them to finally find out on the roads. because Balochistan is a very large province and it's pretty much isolated. But this is as and when they do find bodies, and this has been consistently pointed out not just by the Baloch human rights activists, who you can say have a partisan viewpoint and something to say for it with their own perspective or agenda. Even PHRC, Pakistan Human Rights Commission under Zohra Yusuf, has consistently pointed this out.
Moving on to Nepal, which peacefully conducted the final phase of the national and provincial elections. A historic turnout for the elections is testimony of the fact that people of Nepal desperately want a stable government at the centre. A report.
Nepal completed its final round of parliamentary elections on December 7. More than 12.2 million eligible voters exercised their voting rights in the second phase of the polls. The conduct of the elections is a key step for Nepal to complete a near-decade-long democratic transition after the abolition of the centuries-old monarchy and the end of a civil war against Maoist guerrillas.
अहिलेसम्म जुन यो संक्रमण कालबाट गुजिरहेको थियो देशमा विकास पनि खासै हुन सकेको थिएन जनप्रतिनिधि नभएर पनि भन्नु पर्यो अहिले चुन्न पाएको छ आशा हुन त हामी कहाँ त्यस्तो आशा गर्ने खाले नेता त म देख्दिन तर पनि आशा गर्न अब आउने नेताले सायद देश विकासको लागि केही गर्नुहुन्छ
नयाँ संविधान आइसकेपछि नेपाली जनताहरुमा अब यो नयाँ संसदीय व्यवस्था नयाँ व्यवस्थामा चाहिँ अनुभूत हुने भएकोले मानिसहरु अलि उत्साहित छन्.
The first phase of the election was held on November 26 with final results not expected for about another 10 days because of the cumbersome vote counting procedure. The election pits the centrist Nepali Congress Party of Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba, who heads a loose alliance that includes the Madhesi parties from Nepal's southern plains and former royalist, against a tight-knit alliance of former Maoist and the moderate communist UML party.
Yeah, it's after a long time that we are getting to this kind of electoral process, and I'm very hopeful, because after the last vote we didn't get the result that we wanted, but I'm not sure how this federal system is going to be in the future, but I'm very hopeful that this will bring positive results in the future.
All the Nepalese citizens, the thing is that those who will be elected after casting the vote, they will be doing something good for Nepal country as a whole, because we have got many problems.
This is for the first time that elections for parliamentary and provincial assemblies are being conducted under the new constitution promulgated in September 2015. The elections will elect 128 members of parliament and 256 members of the provincial assemblies. The House of Representatives consists of 275 members, of them 165 are elected directly under the first past the post system, while the remaining 110 come through proportional representation system. Nepal has seen 10 government changes in as many years. Instability has given rise to corruption, retarded growth and slowed recovery from a 2015 earthquake that killed 9,000 people.
The elections are being hailed as the start of a new democratic era for a country that has suffered from years of violence, instability and government ineptitude. We are now joined by Sriram Podel, a political analyst, to further talk about the elections. Mr. Podel, how do you see the completion of this process of simultaneous holding of both elections?
Yeah, well, the recent elections of the Nepal is the major breakthrough to end the critical situation of the nation, and simultaneous holding of the elections. Prior to this, we have already finished the local TI election. This is the new phenomenon for Nepal. Nepal is going to practice the federal exercise within the nations. Provincial and the federal elections are being held. This is due to the limitation fixed by the constitution, which will end by the end of the January this year, coming year, sorry. And due to the pressure created by the constitution, political parties are able to hold these simultaneous election.
Do you think any single party will gain majority in the elections?
Yeah, obviously the vote counting results are coming, and this preliminary results shows that alliances will gain the majority. Basically, left alliance alliance between CPEC and UML and former rebel party Maoist Center, they have alliance, they are getting the comfortable support from the people. And in this sense, if we particularly pin out the party, then CPEC and UML will be the leading party or will be the largest party of this nation.
Thank you, Mr. Podal. Moving on to India, a country which boasts of rich tradition of classical dance and vocal and instrumental music. Recently, capital New Delhi saw enthralling performances by India's noted artists. Take a look.
Music in the Park was the theme of the event that mesmerized Delhi with dazzling performances by the country's noted artists. The two-day event was organized by the Airports Authority of India in collaboration with CPEC in Nehru Park.
The Airport Authority of India, which is mandated with the responsibility of managing the aviation infrastructure in the country, we also are deeply committed to preserving, nurturing the culture of India. So as a part of that, we feel our airport should also reflect the local culture, local heritage, local ethos of the state as well as the country.
On the first evening, the audiences were captivated by enthralling performances by noted Kuchipudi dancers and Padma Bhushan winners Raja and Radha Reddy. They were later joined on stage by Yamini and Bhavna Reddy, who showcased various tales from Hindu mythology with their performances.
Natyam provides a unified forum for the universal enlightenment. That is the greatness of Bharatiya Natyam.
The Kuchipudi show was followed by Kathak performances by dance group of Padma Vibhushan Pandit Birju Maharaj. Pandit Birju Maharaj spoke to the audience regarding the different kinds of rhythms and soon gave a performance himself. The dancers mesmerized the audiences by presenting tales from Lord Krishna's days in Vrindavan. On the concluding day, Sarod Maestro Ustad Amjad Ali Khan made the evening memorable with his soulful performance. He dedicated the concert to the Queen of Tumri, Girija Devi, who passed away on October 24th this year.
I would like to dedicate this concert to Shrimati Girija Devi ji. Her music had color and fragrance that Tumri Dadra will always remember her. She was the only lady she used to tie Rakhi on my hand. मेरी बड़ी बहन थी वो और उनको हमेशा हम मिस करेंगे.
Vocalists Pandit Rajan and Sajan Mishra also left the audience awestruck with their mesmerizing voice.
Such events help motivate artists and preserve the rich cultural heritage of India. With that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.